Okay,
Hello,
Marcus.
Adam, my friend. I have a question for you. We talk about this all the time, and specs and commissioning. How about you talk a little bit about how important they are to basically have a proper commissioning performed?
Okay, so let's start with specs. Specifications are actually legal documents. The basis of your appointment as a contractor or subcontractor is your deliverables are in the spec. That is a legal requirement for you to do that, right? So they are the most important thing. Specs trump drawings in legal cases, right?
Yep.
So specifications matter. So it begs the question, why are commissioning specs so horribly written everywhere? All over the world. It's one of the few common things. Staircase pressurization systems suck and specs suck. That I've worked in 21 countries. Across all of them, that is the case. So there is if you take the USGBC's intention on commissioning, the intention is that the lead commission authority is the client's advocate, right? The owner's advocate. That implies they should be hired early before the design team, and they should be involved in writing the specs. So specifications, there's a different types, right? There's a performance spec. I want you to deliver something that performs X, Y, and Z, right? That's fine. The problem with that is if you're an owner and you write a performance spec, you don't get any control over how X, Y, and Z are given to you. You just get X, Y, and Z at the end, right? So this is the problem with design and build contracts. Clients go, "Oh yeah, I do design and build contracts. Awesome. All that risk has been passed down."
But performance means you have a smaller, tighter, which also means
Yeah.
more
But I've seen
money.
this before on the P3 project. So then the clients go, "Oh, that's great. Awesome. Save money." No, that's a fantasy. Park that. But what happens is they're on the job and they're seeing the construction and design team build and deliver something, and they don't quite like what's going on, but they have no power to intervene because they're only tied to the outcome, not the delivery, right? So performance specs are great, but just know as a client, if you go down the design and build performance spec route, you have no control how they make that sausage. You just get the sausage, right? Boom. And you should never know how the sausage is made, right? So my advice to you, if you're a client, don't get involved in how that sausage is made. Now, if you are someone who's building a data center, a mission critical building, a casino is a mission critical building, something like that, then you really want a detailed spec. I want this and I want it done this way, not that way, with this thing, not that thing, right? So commissioning is about outcomes. I would argue passionately that the commission authority needs to be involved in writing that spec for commissioning. And the other problem with specs is there's a lot of over specification in the Middle East because there's so many different standards. The way a design engineer will do that, he's not sure what to specify, so he specifies everything: American specs, UK specs, local specs. So you get something that's completely almost impossible to comply with because a lot of these specs contradict each other. So long story short, specs are important. You're hiring a commission authority anyway, get them involved as a client in reviewing your specs and advising you and writing them for the commissioning section.
So now you want to go detailed here a little bit question, like over here with the 019110 or 9113s, right? So it's just like when I get involved in a project, I provide those at a minimum, 22, 23s, sometimes 25s, for integrated automation, and then 26, electrical. But we put those in, we write them in, and then at the same time, I've had cases where it's just like, okay, this is too detailed. You're like, oh, it'll cost more. You know what I mean? Like, then I'm like, this is standard. This is ASHRAE, 0 minimum requirements. It's kind of like, okay. So that's another question where it's just like, so now you basically have, this is what thou shall do, right? And then this is must do. And then here's the next question I always basically ask is, it's almost like EQ and IQ. Like, how do you actually put something down on a piece of paper, and then how do you actually enforce it in a way where it's beneficial to the job instead of them doing it and wanting to do it? So you're actually crossing the finish line together, if that makes any sense.
So EQ, IQ, I like them, but they are performance criteria, right? So you can have those in. The other way to look at commissioning is technical. Yes, it's also a sort of form of technical project management in a way, but it is also a compliance test, a validation test, right? So if you have IEQ or IAQ criteria in your spec, what you're asking the commissioning authority to do is test and validate that that's been met, right?
I was actually EQ, IQ. I was actually saying just how do you actually, but that's good too. We can talk about that another time. But I was talking about just like how you do it, how you say it, how you get along. I know it's going to sound really weird.
So EQ,
but,
emotional quotient. I mean,
yeah,
my bad. So this is where you're getting into team dynamics, right? So you can write down on a bit of paper,
yes,
do this, not that, do this, not that, and then 100 people will look at that and have 100 different takeaways from it, right?
correct.
So this is where the commission authority is a bit like the commissioning manager.
Oh, I'm Dr. Phil. I'm Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
I mean, you name it. I can be Oprah. You know what I mean? It's just like all we're doing is just like, oh my God. Okay. Do you feel good? Will you really do what the spec says, please? You know.
So I'm going to give a shout out to someone who's called Mickey Phillips in the UK. He used to say to me, Adam, the key to being a great project manager and commission manager is knowing who needs a hug and who needs a kick.
Yeah, daily.
True words have never been said better than that. Shout out to Mickey Phillips there. But that's true, right? As a leader, you've got to be able to read the room. This is where your EQ, soft skills come in, right? You're running that team, you're running that meeting. You've got to look around the table. Who's not getting it? Who's getting it? Who needs a little shove? Who needs a pickup, right? Who needs a bit of a public shaming? But you've got to, that's the art of leadership, right? So engineering is about hard skills, but what's really underplayed is the soft skills side of it, the ability to work out what is going on, read the room, read the project, what's working, what's not working, how do I affect change? That is why commissioning and commission management is actually a bit harder than people give it credit for, because you have to be in that EQ, that emotional quotient to your work. And, you can't be the angry ranting guy, like the guy in the Muppets, the Swedish chef. You can't be that guy all the time.
Well, specs are like saying, you have to do this, you know what I mean? Code specs, you know what I mean? Then it's like, okay, you know what I mean? Then it's kind of like, all right, now how do we get those done? So it's just like, that's what I think is missing sometimes. And it's so important.
One of my hacks in their meetings is if it's all going like everyone's fighting each other, it's okay, we've all agreed and all signed a contract that we could deliver this spec. And one goes, yeah, okay. So let's just agree. The spec says this. Have we done that? Yes or no? So sometimes it can work for you, right?
Right.
When it's a real hard requirement. Have we done that? Yes and no. And then you can get it down to that, right? But that's like a conflict resolution thing. That still requires EQ to know when to pull that move, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So EQ, the takeaway from this question is, yes, your engineering skills are great, and I'm sure your mum's proud of you, but EQ is as important, right? If not more important. Because you can have the best sort of hard skills in the world. If you can't deliver them in a group and team environment, then you suck, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.